Hello, this is the lecture for Friday, March 12th, 2021, for Ancient and Medieval History. What we spent our time on was the reign last time of Marcus Aurelius and briefly his partner Lucius Verus. We talked about Marcus's meditations and we talked about his son Commodus. Today we're going to talk about the rest of the Pax Romana, this period of time in the 2nd century that was a high point of human and Roman history in terms of peace and prosperity. By this point, we are 100, 200, and more years after Augustus. Augustus starts his reign in 27 BC, so that would be 73 AD for 100 years, if I'm not miscalculating it, and then 173. Yeah, we're talking between 150 and 200 years after Augustus establishes the Roman Empire. Think about what this country was like 150 to 200 years ago. 150 years ago, we were a nation that had not yet reached the Pacific properly. Let's see, 150 years from 2020? No, I'm wrong. That would be, let's see, 1921, 1821. No, 1871. In 1871, we had just finished fighting the Civil War. Much of the South was still under U.S. Army rule, and the country had established from sea to shining sea territory, but we had not yet gone overseas anywhere. We had also just gotten a hold of Alaska. So the issue of having a large black population in the South that had been mostly slave and a few free blacks in the North and elsewhere was something that that the country was dealing with. What to do about the southern states, whether to give them self-government again, and under what conditions would we give self-government again? That was an issue. The Ku Klux Klan was born. That was an issue. And the United States was yet to complete its absorption and conquest of the West and of the native tribes that lived there. 200 years ago, it was 1821. We still had slavery. We were a new country. We had not yet gone from sea to shining sea. We had the Louisiana Purchase, and we had people going into the Oregon and California. No, we didn't really have that many in 1821. In 1821, the states of Maine and Missouri both become states. They had been Maine had been a colony of Massachusetts, and Missouri had been a territory. So it's a long time ago. We were a one-party state in 1821. There was no two parties. It was the era of good feeling, where the Democratic Republicans ruled for everyone. One-party state. We still had slavery. So think about all the changes that have happened in the United States in all of that time. This is analogous to the amount of time during the Pax Romana. Now, by this point, Rome is not. Rome is the capital of the empire still. And it is the biggest city, except maybe for Alexandria in Egypt, in that it has over 1 million people. So in that sense, it's still first among equals. But many other cities around the empire are maturing as centers of their regions and as important to empire-wide trade. So the Roman Empire, now, instead of being Rome and a bunch of barbarous provinces that they conquered, plus the Greek world that they sort of brought in, Rome now is growing its own cities in Western Europe and is Romanizing reasonably harmoniously the Greek cities that they conquered in the Eastern Mediterranean. The borders, thanks to Trajan's conquests and Hadrian's stabilization, are secure. Yes, the Marcomani threat appears during Marcus Aurelius's time, and it's a tough threat. because by this point the Germans had been being fought by the Romans for about 250 years. And after 250 years, you learn your enemy's ways. So these Marcomani, these frontiersmen that fought Marcus Aurelius, were not pushovers. They were not the barbarians that were easily defeated by Caesar or easily intimidated. They knew Rome. They knew how to fight Rome. And it took 20 long years and the emperor's personal involvement to end that war victoriously for Rome. In the east, the Parthians were the only nation on Rome's borders, and there was occasional friction over who would rule Armenia, and Ostrohane, which are countries in the mountains of what is now eastern Turkey and northwestern Iran, that were sort of client states of the Romans and of the Parthians. And the question is, does Rome have the Armenian king, or is the Armenian king a client of the Parthians? But that is not worth fighting a major war over. Lucius Verus had some provocations, but the truth is he was mainly going east to fight the Parthians in order to win glory. Unfortunately, he came back with the plague. So the borders, for the most part, are stabilized. The colonies mature. I said Romanization takes centuries. It really does take centuries of time and stable rule in order to acculturate alien populations into your way of living and your way of thinking about the world. It takes time. It takes generations of time. Well, the Romans have been at it for quite a while. And so the job of Romanization is not complete, but it gets close to being complete during this period of time, except in the newer colonies like Dacia and Britain. And even in southern Britain, what we would now consider southeastern England, the Romans have been there for long enough so that Romanization has really begun to take root, but it hasn't fully taken over like it has in Iberia and in Gaul. Colonies are maturing, Romanization is progressing, the cities are getting bigger, everyone is getting wealthier. Well, everyone who's not a slave. The Roman Empire does revolve around slavery. Now, the military strategy is largely the same as it was under Augustus and the Principate. It is a strategy of forward defense. The Roman Empire's borders are not walls that they hunker behind and hide. Ooh, we hope nothing comes across. They are bases of operation, forward bases of operation, from which the Romans sally forth to show the flag and chastise any troublemakers. They have spies going out. They are a base of operation from which Rome projects its power. They are not places that mark the end of Roman influence. Far from it. They are a basis of Roman influence. Now, the professional soldiers in the time, and here you can look at the Legionary on the last page of your notes. On that page is a drawing of a Roman legionary of the Pax Romana period, and they are wearing what is called the lorica segmentata. The lorica segmentata is segmented armor, like the plates on a lobster or a shrimp shell. These are steel segments that are designed to overlap to allow you to bend and move within them. There are strong shoulder plates. There are segments over the chest. There are protections for the legs. And the helmet is a work of art. It's heavy, yeah, but it protects the cheeks, and it protects the back of the neck with that protruding lid, and it protects the head. And of course, you wear a lot of padding under the metal armor, because if you don't wear a lot of padding, and this is something a lot of movies get wrong, you walk around with metal armor and no padding, or light padding, and you basically are asking for the armor to wound you. Somebody hits the armor with a club, it goes psh, and now you have the metal armor digging into your chest. So you wear a lot of padding. The lorica segmentata is the best body armor that the Romans ever have. It is just like that sculpture over there. It is the peak of Rome's armorer's art. It is better than chainmail. It is a step towards plate armor, which most people associate with knights in shining armor during the Middle Ages. Well, the Romans have their version. And unlike the knights in shining armor that are designed for horse soldiers, so they can wear much heavier armor because the horse is carrying them around, the Romans' armor is designed for foot soldiers. So it's designed to be light enough so that a strong man in good shape can move and fight and work in this armor. They live in this lorica segmentata armor. The Roman shield is still that big rectangular tower shield going down to the ankles, and they still use the pilum, and they still use the short sword, the gladius. And basically everything I've said about the Roman army is still true during the Pax Romana. They're still professional soldiers. During the crisis, all of this will change. But for now, the Roman army is still recognizably Roman. And it is the best army equipped, trained in the known world, probably in the world at that time. These guys are professional soldiers. They're not fiery warriors. They're just professional soldiers. They just do the job. They win the wars, and they provide peace and prosperity and security for everyone behind their shield. Now, economically, this is also a high point. The currency of Rome, the silver denarius, the Roman aureus, are stable. Now, in ancient times, there was a stable money supply. What that means is that after Marius's time, there were precious few strikes of new gold and new silver resources. For the most part, the Greek and Roman world had the gold and silver that it had. So there wasn't a great expansion of the amount of money in the economy. The money was the silver and the gold. It was stamped into coins with emperors' heads on them or faces on them or images of faces on them in order to create a uniform weight of coin and in order to make sure that the coins were authorized by the imperial government as being pure silver or pure gold of a certain weight. All of this is also about politics. Whoever gets to put his face on the currency is the ruler. If your face is on money, you're in charge because people use money for everything. It's a way of spreading propaganda about how strong a ruler you are. Now, because there is a stable amount of gold and silver in the Greek and Roman world, and because the gold and silver coins of Rome are pure and well measured, money holds its value. There isn't much inflation, which is what happens when money loses its value and it takes more and more and more dinars to buy the same product. That's inflation. That does not happen during the Pax Romana. That also will change during the crisis. But for now, you can bank on Rome's money being worth what it is supposed to be. Because to adulterate the coins, to add nickel to a silver piece, for example, you're going to die slowly of torture. So, for the most part, people don't do it. The empire has been at peace for so long that the civilian lifestyle has become normal. That people expect, just as we expect, to lead lives that are not constantly impinged on by violence, whether it's the violence of criminals or the violence of invaders, or much the violence of your own government. The civilian lifestyle allows the greatest personal freedom and joy, and it allows the greatest degree of economic prosperity because people can focus on earning a living, making stuff. Not defending, but making stuff. Growing food, making metal products, making wood products, shipping things, building ships, all sorts of stuff like that. You have a civil economy that is dedicated to fulfilling people's dreams, So people start businesses. The Pax Romana period, in many ways, is a lot like the United States has been during most of its recent time, during the last couple of hundred years. We are a free market. The Romans didn't have a completely free market, but they had a largely unstructured one. Taxes were reasonably low. People had a great degree of freedom to choose how they earned a living. But if they were working for the government or handling money, they were going to be closely scrutinized to make sure that they didn't cheat. Obviously, you don't have political freedom like we do. You don't criticize the emperor, you don't do anything against the empire, or you suffer the fate of those poor benighted Christians who get punished for not sacrificing incense to the emperor. When civilian lifestyle becomes normal, that's a sign that the society has been at peace for a good long time. Now, long distance empire wide trade has also been normalized. So, to ship goods from Syria in the eastern Mediterranean Levantine region all the way to Britain is done. It's normal. It's been done for over a century. People begin to count on this as being the way things normally are. It's not normal. It is very abnormally good. It is a silver age, they call it. But it is a time when people have had it so good for so long that they expect that to continue because they think it's normal. They don't really appreciate how good they've got it because they don't know much else. They don't delve deep into the history. They don't look into how things were before the empire came and unified this big market and started protecting most of the people with a fairly small, efficient army. No, they begin to take it for granted as normal. Again, as we take our civilian lifestyle, our long distance trade. When we go to the supermarket, we don't do what a Russian friend did of mine when he first came to the United States. He went to a supermarket in the 1980s and he cried his eyes out. In a supermarket. Because in communist Russia, to have all of that food on shelves where people could take it. In Soviet stores, everything is behind the counter. You go in with a list and you give it to the grocer, and the grocer goes back to the shelves, and they pick your bread, and they pick your meat, and they pick your butter, and if there isn't enough, they give you what they have, and you like it, and you take it, and you don't make trouble, and you move on. And you never get everything you want, not unless you are a member of the leadership of the Communist Party. So, he cried, grown man, because of what it meant to have a full supermarket where the people were actually allowed to handle the merchandise themselves before they bought it, where they were allowed to choose their merchandise, where there was fresh fruit and vegetables year-round, where there was a selection of meats, a selection of different products. These things didn't exist in communist Russia. And in many ways, they still don't. It's gotten somewhat better, but not a lot. So this idea that civilian life and long-distance trade is normal is itself a sign of how long there has been peace and prosperity. Now, there are signs of a Roman mission during the time of Antoninus Pius arriving in the Han Dynasty Chinese court, the imperial court of the Chinese Empire, at the other end of Eurasia. The Chinese records indicate that they are representatives of a Western king called Antun, Roman Emperor Antoninus, Antun. And they had some brief negotiations with the Chinese, and they established some occasional sporadic trade across Eurasia from the Roman world in the west to the Chinese world in the east. Amazing accomplishment. There are also signs of Roman traders and Roman refugees even as far away as India. So, long distance trade not only includes within the empire, it also includes beyond the empire. The greatest sign, though, of the degree to which Rome experienced peace and prosperity are the suburbs. The suburbs. Think about that. We assume suburbs are banal, boring places where nothing ever happens and the houses are all like rabbit hutches. Everything's the same. You got your little patch of land, your little lawn, your little garden. A lot of intellectual types, they love showing disdain for the suburbs. Oh, you're suburban, you're bourgeois. Suburbs are paradise. Compared to the way most people live throughout most of history, you've got your own house. That house might be separate, a separate structure from the houses around it. You've got your own yard, maybe small, but it's your own. You don't have to share it. You can garden the way you want. And our houses are filled with luxuries. Well, the Romans didn't have a middle class the way we did, but the Romans, during the time of the Pax Romana, expanded the development of suburbs. And the thing about suburbs that really indicates how peaceful and prosperous it is they don't have walls around them. There may be fences, but those are not the same thing as walls. Traditionally, Europeans and people throughout Eurasia have to live crowded together if they want to live behind the safety of walls. A European farmer does not live in an independent house in the middle of his land. A European farmer lives in the village with all the other farmers, and every morning they have to walk several miles to their field. Nobody lives on their field. They go out and they work in their fields and they do their jobs, and then they come home and they walk the several miles with the other farmers back to the village where they live. This crowding behind walls is normal and necessary for protection in an uncertain world. And European cities had walls until the 1800s in some cases, but not in the Pax Romana Roman times. The walls became less necessary. Then the walls became seen as being practically unnecessary. People began to build homes, standalone homes in the countryside, just like we do. What that means is they're not terrified of bandit, rapist, brigand, thief, arsonist, murderers wandering out of the woods on a regular basis and attacking them. Because the legions keep the foreign enemy at bay and the imperial government keep the criminals at bay, and it's safe enough to invest in buying your own home or living in a home outside of city walls. That is evidence beyond all doubt that the Romans of the Pax Romana experienced unprecedented peace and prosperity. In fact, they are among the only people in human history to have extensive suburbs before us. That's how unusual suburbs are. Now, during the Pax Romana, the rise of the mystery cults continues, and the decline of the Olympian religion continues. Again, people read the Iliad and the Odyssey and they get heroic things, but fewer and fewer people find the meaning of their lives explained satisfactorily by the stories of the Olympian gods. More and more people are looking for something more vivid, more personal, more of an experience. They are looking for something better. And what they find is in the Eastern mystery cults that I told you about. For men, the cult of Mithra. For women, the cult of Isis. And these mystery cults, as I told you during the Principate, they were just appearing during the Principate. These mystery cults would quietly recruit the best and the brightest to join them. And the best and the brightest tended to have lucre. They tended to have coin. And so they would spend coin feeding the cult. And after they had fed the cult enough with their money and their service and their credulity, their belief, they would be initiated into a secret mystery. They would fast, they would meditate. This fasting and meditation would interfere with their sleep patterns, would interfere with their diet, and would make them more susceptible to visions, more susceptible to the notion that the world is a place where you can see ghosts and spirits and elements and all of these things. In fact, what happens is, come on in, just try not to make too much noise if you can. In fact, what happens is that the people who are initiated are not only physically prepared by sleep deprivation and by eating limited food, but they've been psychologically prepared. They've been reading certain books, mind-blowing books. There's one over here too. They've been reading books designed to free the mind from the conventional reality. And when the people from the mystery cult would come to your home with bells and take you out of your bed in the middle of the night and bring you blindfolded and confused to a secret place where the ritual would take place, and the ritual would be either a blood rite sacrifice or some kind of project or some kind of sexual experience, what would happen is, through this experience, you would feel like you've had an epiphany, like your world has suddenly changed, like you see the world now differently than you've seen it before because you've experienced the mysteries. You've not only been told a secret, thank you, gentlemen, but you've seen the mysteries, you've experienced them, you've felt them, you've had a thoroughgoing experience of mind, of body, of emotion, of spirit, all of it. And that intensity is what the Romans craved. So it is that intensity that allows the mystery cults to grow. Now, at first, the Romans considered Christianity to be merely another Eastern mystery cult, some weird variant of Judaism. But in fact, Christianity is different. Christianity does not revolve around bells and whistles. Yes, there are the mysteries. There's the sacrament of the Eucharist, of Holy Communion, where you eat the bread and drink the wine, the body and blood of Christ. That's a mystery. But it's not comparable to the kind of bells and whistles, literally in some cases, that these mystery cults would induce in their mystery things. Also, anyone could be a Christian. God, in the form of Christ, did not come to save the best and the brightest and the well-connected. He came to save anyone who would say yes to him. That is not the case with the mystery religions. The mystery religions, many of whom have Gnostic tendencies, and we talked about Gnosticism, are all about an elite of the mind, an elite of the spirit, an elite of wealth, an elite that's better than everyone else, an elite that has secrets no one else has, an elite that has a connection to the universe, to eternity, and to eternal life no one else has except them, because it's their secret. You see the appeal? So, along with the spreading of the mystery cults, there is the spread of the Christian faith. The Christian faith, for the most part, is an urban phenomenon at first. It spreads from city to city. Many people in the countryside still follow the old pagan faiths. But cities throughout the empire, especially in the East, have growing and thriving Christian populations. And these Christian populations become large enough to get noticed by the local imperial governments. And the local governors have a problem with this. They act like Jews in that their God is the only God, and therefore they won't sacrifice to the emperor the incense that's required once a year. And they won't take part in community events. And they won't take part in military service. And they're just people apart. But unlike the Jews, they're spreading into our neighborhoods. They're spreading into our families. Our loved ones are becoming Christians. So the Christians begin experiencing strongly negative reactions, and ultimately they begin experiencing persecution as a result of their successful spread throughout the Greek East in general, including the countryside, and throughout the empire in toto in cities. Now, during this period of time, the aristocracy remains Italian, but it also includes people from Iberia, people we would call Spaniards, because the imperial dynasty is a Spanish dynasty. From Trajan all the way through Commodus, the Romans that are emperors were Romans that settled in Spain at Gaius Marius's time. So, or a little before. So you've got Italian nobles, you've got Spanish nobles, and of course in the Greek East you've got a bunch of patrician Roman citizens, nobles, they're aristocrats there as well. So here's where I'm going to leave it for today, Friday, March 12th. You have a unit survey to do, and I'm going to give you a little bit more time to do it. So the next time we meet on Monday, God willing, we will talk about the Great Crisis. Thank you. Come again.